Okay, this next part is honestly a whole bunch of hand fitment work. But let's be honest, if anybody's going to be porting their saw, they're doing everything by hand anyway. So what I have and what I've done is I've got 320 grit emery cloth here. I've got a roll of it, and I'll put it around this 1-inch socket. And with the emery cloth on here, the way it fits fairly snug, just like the bearing would. And then I'll turn that by hand and use that to move that bearing pocket down. Then I've also got, I think this is a 1-inch stone, and I'll bring it in here and just use it to clean up. And I'll put that in the drill so I can reverse the direction and run it the direction that I want on both sides. So I'm gonna mount this up in the vise and start on that process, and I'll see if I can move the camera there. Just got this emery cloth on this socket. The emery moves through the material pretty quickly. So you can see I'm already, my pointer. You can see I'm already shining up here and here on the more thrust surface, but I'm not really hitting the outside edges. And that's what we're going for, because I don't want to widen the pocket, I just want to deepen the pocket. Working this other side down to match. Same thing. We're getting a lot here on this surface, and then on the downward edge of these other two surfaces. And I'll get that stone out here in a second. This may wind up a little bit loud on the camera, so I'm sorry. I'm just working that edge down with the stone. And I'll do the other side as well. Alright, I've made a little bit of progress. I've removed one of my bearings from the crankshaft. I'm just going to use Sharpie as a little bit of layout dye, if you will. And go over this pocket, put a bearing in here, and see where we remove the Sharpie. So we're still high right here and high on this side. I've just got some emery cloth over the socket. I'll put it in here. And you can see it does not take very long to move through the surface layer with the emery cloth. We're making progress. We've got a total of 30 thousandths to move. Alright, we're about 30 minutes in working those pockets. I've got it put back together here. We're just going to try to check this squish. That's about 30 thousandths. So we're making progress. This is all I'm doing in these pockets. Working this emery cloth in there while pushing down with this socket. Happens to be a Napa 1-inch. So if you guys can see, even a pretty nice finish in there. We'll have to get to these seal pockets next, after we've got squish adjusted. Here's that bearing. Fits in there nice and snug. It's not loose, it doesn't twist. Same over here. It's a mess, I need to clean it. Let's clean the cylinder up and check squish again. Okay, we're definitely getting closer. I went ahead and put 4 bolts in here. I don't know what these bolts are. I should probably measure the thread pitch just out of the toolbox. I don't even know what they're out of. But we've closed our gap almost completely all the way around. There's just less than a sheet of paper gap, so probably 1 to 2 thousandths in here, which is perfect for the Moto seal. I'll flip this around and we can check the squish. Okay guys, we're going to check squish here now that we're back together. Make a new little ball of solder here. That's all I do. On the PTO side. Side we are, oh, dropped it. Come on. Right about 30 thousandths. We'll check it on the flywheel side. Turns over about the same. Still right at 30 thousandths. So I've got another 10 thousandths to go off of the bearing pockets. Put it back in the other vise and keep going with the emery cloth. To get a little more use out of my emery cloth here, just take it and tear off the part that we're using, and it exposes an unused section. And keep going. Okay, here we are again, working the bearing pockets, trying to sneak up on our squish. We'll check the PTO side. And we're getting close. We'll lock that one down. Close to 20 thousandths. Check it here with the feeler gauges. This is 21 thousandths, just barely goes in here with a little bit of drag. So we're probably close to 21 to 22 thousandths. I'm going to call that good on the squish. Alright, this is where we're at here. So I haven't moved the seal pockets yet. We'll get to that later. I did move the seal pocket inner lip just a little bit down so I could get in there with my stone to clean everything up. And then we've moved this arc here down for the bearing pocket. And there's probably a better way to do this where you could move both of them down together, keep everything square, maybe on some sort of mandrel. But this is what I could come up with what I have in the garage here. And effectively, we have cut our squish band and lowered our bearing pockets to both increase our squish and lower our exhaust roof. I did just probably put about 20 more swipes on the sandpaper on the sealing surface here. I don't know how well you can see that, but it has a really nice crosshatch to it. That 80 grit sandpaper leaves just a gentle texture here that Moto seal will grab into very well. That should seal up no problem. And you can start to see we are no longer round in here for where the seals will go. We will have to come in here and cut the tops of these seal pockets, but we can do that with a Dremel. Actually, that's pretty easy. Okay, I'm going to get this put together so we can get new timing numbers. Okay guys, small update here. I didn't make it to timing it yet. I put layout die Sharpie on the top of my piston because when I clamped it down all the way full torque with all 4 bolts, I heard just a little bit of hitting on the top, on the inside of the cylinder. And And if I look real close here on my intake side, right here on the edge, I am hitting the inside of the cylinder. So that is where we didn't use a cutting mandrel, we used sandpaper. That's where the sandpaper didn't quite clean up all the way to the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and just barely break over this edge, just maybe 10 thousandths, just kind of round to this corner over a little bit. And I'll just do that by hand with a little bit of sandpaper. And I'll get this all cleaned up, check it again, and I'll get back with you. I'd really like to not be doing this on my exhaust side, because I don't want to lose any of the exhaust timing we just added, but I also don't want an interference fit between my piston and my cylinder head. It is what it is. We'll just make it fit the best that we can. This is, I don't know, feels like 320. It's pretty fine sandpaper. Alright, and then most of that contact was right here over the top of the intake. Okay, clean this up and I'll try fitment again. Alright guys, I'm just finishing up fitment here. I got the top edge of that piston broken over, and under clamp force I no longer have contact, so I'm happy with that. But when I clamp it down full torque, I'm noticing my bearings are binding just a little bit, and I don't know if that's because I'm doing this by hand and I have them a little bit off square, or if I've left too much gap between the two halves, so it's actually crushing the outer race of the bearing, which is what I feel like is happening. So I'm removing just a little bit of material off of the inside of the pockets on the bottom of the case half here. No, it's not a case half, it's a clamshell. But the bottom of the crankcase, if you will. Just to clearance that out a little bit to get everything fitting just right. This really is just a lot of hand fitment work. And maybe that's why people say this isn't worth it. But it's my time, and it's next to nothing in materials, and I'm having fun. Alright guys, I realized I just did a few things extra off the camera. Sometimes I get carried away. I took a new squish measurement and locked it in to my calipers, and then came in here with the feeler gauge, and we are right at 22 thousandths. I am happy with that number. I also freed up those bearing pockets, and it spins over by hand now. So I'll just write this down. Our squish was 40 thousandths. We machined it out to 55 thousandths. We wanted to cut it back to 20 thousandths, and we got 22 thousandths. I'm okay with that. And then I've got my piston stop in here, and finding top dead center there, I see 50.5, and I see 51. Move it just a little. 50, just under 51. And 51. We're right there. Take the piston stop out. And first things first, let's see where our exhaust time is. That's in through the spark plug hole. And oh, that's a lot of light. There it is. Let me move you guys here just a little bit, and you'll be able to see that first ray of light right along with me. Sorry for my finger in the way there. I'll shut off my headlamp. There it is. Call that it, and that puts us at 98. Yeah, I'll call that 98. Let's just see what it is on the other side. Let's see where it closes and see if it's the same. $96. So maybe 97. We were 94. Okay, we'll split the difference, call it 97. So we wanted to move 4 degrees and we moved 3 degrees. Okay. We still moved. We'll try that. Let's see where our transfers open. You guys cannot see this from your angle. It should be later, but the same amount of blowdown because we didn't change that amount of blowdown. 121. And they were 117, so also moved 4 degrees. Okay, intake. We likely have an enormous amount of intake timing. Here's our intake. We've definitely dropped the cylinder. Not as much of that ring is showing. And the intake cracks open. You guys can see that bubble in there. That's the Croil. I'm just using it as a little bit of lubricant. Intake cracks open right here at 82, 84 degrees. Before top dead center, and the intake closes at 85 degrees after top dead center, 84, 85. Why did we only move 1 degree each side? Because we were 83, 84. All right, why did we move 94, 5, 6, 7? We moved 3 degrees on the exhaust. We moved 4 degrees on the transfers, but we only moved 2 degrees total. Wow, we moved 3 degrees each side on the exhaust. We moved 4 degrees each side on the transfers, but we only moved 1 degree each side on the intake. I guess that's because we cover less distance in more degrees, or we cover more degrees and less distance near the top and bottom of the stroke. I guess that makes sense. So our total timing now, instead of 172, is, let me get my calculator here. So it would be 97 plus 97 minus 360. So our total exhaust timing is now 166 degrees. And then 84 plus 85, and we're up to 169 degrees of intake timing. And then transfers, 121 minus 97, 24 degrees of blowdown. We didn't actually move the ports, so that's relatively still the same. This is either, well, we'll have to see how that comes out. We definitely moved our squish and our exhaust. Those were our two goals. Now the next step is going to be lightening the piston and the crank. Lightening the piston and the crank, and then we'll start our porting. I'll get back with you when it's apart, and I've got a game plan for the crank.